So something I'm starting to believe and I wanted to put out there is I think the next decade could go down as the golden decade of landlording. And now specifically I'm referring to landlording of affordable housing. But I like to put out things that I think and sort of put it out early and sort of see how it all unwinds. So I thought I'd put this out there and sort of lay out my thoughts. And so I thought we'd first go into why I think the next decade is the golden decade of landlording. I think there's some reasons and some things that I see happening that are going to help us. I want to be clear on things I'm not saying because I'm going to make sort of some, I don't know, some declarations on the first slide, and I want to sort of be very clear what I am saying and not saying. Talk about what could go wrong because again, lots of things could happen that would make this, maybe make this decade very rough, for example. But I thought I would, again, sort of share what could go wrong. And then if you're like me and you think this next decade is going to be good for becoming a landlord, and more specifically a landlord of affordable housing, sort of talk about what you can do to get started. So first, I don't see builders ever being able to build affordable housing profitably again, right? They're profitable now. However, when you look at sort of the regulations and the cost to get a permit and inflation and tariffs and all these other things, I just don't see how it ever becomes affordable to really build the house at, I don't know, 75% of the median. Because if they did, right, if you put out housing stock that was 75% of the median, it would get gobbled up and pretty soon be more than the median. So I just don't see that happening. So I think if you can get in below the median, sort of own it, manage it well, it's going to be very profitable. I think also we've seen the peak in owner-occupied housing. I don't know the exact number, but it was probably sometime around 2007, maybe 2008. I think the owner-occupant ratio had gotten higher than it's ever been, and I think it was 62 or 63%, certainly north of 60, and we hadn't seen something like that. And frankly, those last couple of percentage points were 100% because of easy financing and teaser loans and things that ended up causing great destruction. So I think that last couple of percentage points in owner occupant were 100% artificial and won't be seen again probably in my lifetime. So I think owner occupant rates keep coming down. It means you only have one other side of that is that's going to be you're a renter. I think it's also pretty clear that the younger generation, which actually outnumbers baby boomers, clearly favor flexibility and mobility and are establishing families later in life and all of these things. And the sort of the last thing I can see them doing, or at least in mass, is sort of signing up for a 30-year commitment, right? I think one of the things we'll see in a few years is that sort of thing that was common for the baby boomers, even Gen Xers, is that 30-year mortgage. I'm not sure, but it just feels like something is going to have to change as this new generation is should be in their prime buying years, and they're just not. Right? They're starting to trickle in now, but I'm not sure that's going to be ever going to be a main thing for them. So I think they're going to be renters certainly a lot longer and for a greater number of years of their total life. I also think inflation is kicking up, which is going to mean both the value of the assets are going to increase, the value of construction material, rents, all of that stuff is going to be increasing. So I think being a landlord is going to be very profitable. Also, I think there's just too many Class A properties being built. Again, these are the only ones that are profitable to build. But again, when you have too much of one stock and you have a low number of them being built, it sort of leaves a part of the market unserved. And I think that's a place that wise landlords are going to help fill. And then in addition, I think interest rates are going to be rising for a number of years, and that's going to keep freezing people out that maybe want to buy. Maybe it's the millennials that want to buy, but with rising rates and already high prices, it just becomes unaffordable, and it sort of tells them that renting is better. So I think there's lots of things that are going to make being a landlord the right thing to do the next 10 years. So first thing I'm not saying is I don't think all types of landlording are going to work. For example, I think if you tried to be a landlord in Class A, I think you're going to get hurt. I think one of the outcomes of having too much inventory being built is that sometime in the future, you're not going to be able to sell that housing stock, and somebody's going to have to come in and rent that. I think getting a wave of renters into a Class A neighborhood is going to depress values and depress rents for that housing stock. So I think that's a risk. It's a couple years out, but certainly a risk. So I'm not saying all types of landlording are going to work. I'm not talking about flipping, right? I think the flipping game is sort of seen its run. Flipping is a great business in a seller's market. I think it's clear we're not in a seller's market anymore. I think this short-term profit game is going to wash people out. I think there's going to be lots of people stuck with inventory with high hard money financing, and they're going to be in trouble very soon. And again, I'm not talking about short term, right? This time horizon is a decade, right? There may be a year or two where there's a blip here and there, but I think day zero now, and I don't know what it is, day 3,650, right? 10 years times 365 is sort of, I think you're going to be happy, long term, and I just think this is the right thing to do. So what could go wrong? Well, I don't know. One thing that I read about all the time, I think it was the 70s, when the IRS changed the game around some regulations and passive losses against income. I think maybe it was the 80s, sorry. A lot of the doctors and dentists you hear about, or at least I read about, sort of bought real estate because it can hide their income. Well, they changed that logic and it just flooded the inventory with, sort of must sell. So I don't know if the IRS changed something about writing off mortgage interest against rentals. That would certainly have an impact. I don't see it happening, but again, anything's possible, frankly. I think if the government came in and built huge affordability tracks, like they declared, I don't know, dozens and dozens of different sort of cities and said we're going to build 10,000 homes, right? I think anytime the government certainly has the capacity to do that. I don't think they'll do a great job of it, but it certainly could force, it would force a reaction in a market for sure. And then again, I think the government could come in and interfere with the free market. I think anytime they come in, and this could be rent control, this could be really anything that just sort of impacts capitalism and sort of says thou shalt not do this or that. I think there's huge unintended consequences, and some of those may be detrimental. Often, what I've seen, at least historically, when they come in to intervene, it ends up hurting long term the people they're trying to help. So if you're going to get started, I believe in goals first, right? What do you want to do? Is it just buy one? Is it buy four? I think either of those are the right goals to start with. I think you need to get pre-approved, not pre-qual. There's a difference. Pre-qual is just a piece of paper. Go through the process of getting a loan, right? Approval. That means they're going to take your W-2, they're going to take a copy of your paycheck, look at your bank statements. Because again, I think when you're ready to go, you need to have that with you. I think you need to understand the quality difference in inventory. I've now come to believe there's sort of three types. There's the slumlord stuff that's uninhabitable and disgusting. There's the well lived in, but rented below market. These are the ones that I bought years ago, but ended up costing me more money. Because when I raised rents, the tenants left, and then I had to repair the unit to quality. So I'm actually recommending people who have busy full-time jobs just by pride of ownership. You've seen lots of pride of ownership examples on this website, but the idea is you get to finance the repair cost. And again, if the interest rates stay low, financing a repair cost saves you a lot of cash and allows you to have a rental that's going to be easy to manage. Assuming you put enough down to make it cash flow, it's going to be an easy to manage property long term. And again, if time is your constraint, you don't need extra risk or extra things to think about. So again, starting out, I wish I had started out with pride of ownership rentals versus the sort of middle of the road ones that I'd done, because I would have saved cash when you would have had more cash to buy the next one. And then again, I think you need to understand what the rental amount is, what's the monthly rate. I recommend being very conservative when you start. Try to get the mortgage payment less than 50% or less than rent. If you want to refi later and play that game, go ahead. But let's make sure your first one is set up to be successful. In the end, that's what I think. I think the next decade is going to be great for being a landlord of affordable housing. If you agree with me, go ahead and hit the like button. You have a comment or question, leave it below. And as always, tag a friend or two as we're trying to get subscribers up to over 200. Have a great day.